Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 54. First-person protagonists. Point of view. Part 4. What is happening? Things have turned completely upside down. What skills do you have? Why can't I access the information even when I ask the Supervisory Bureau? I was curious as well. I also wanted to see my attributes window. So what happened? Am I going to be penalized? Where did you hear that? Hey, do you know how hard I defended you? Administrator, please listen to me. Kim Dokje isn't a scammer or a strange person. He is just a very hard worker. He speak in a convincing manner. Fortunately, my earnest appeal was taken into consideration. I've analyzed the entire scenario and found that you only used a few skills. It isn't enough to destroy the ecology of the scenarios. It was as I expected. I didn't learn passive skills for no reason. The more good skills I used, the easier it was to attract the attention of the Bureau. Besides, there are some loud guys in other areas. The Bureau is busy right now. Then it worked out well? In fact, there are a few jerks, but instructions came down from the upper management and the great Dakibi said to dismiss it. I was amazed by the unexpected words. The great Dakibi interfered? Sigh, listen to the intermediate Dakibi. I shouldn't be here. There are suddenly more eyes on me. You should be careful. This is the jurisdiction of the intermediate Dakibi, and he has a firm grudge against you. Grudge? Don't you know? The plausibility meeting is like a tax investigation. In any case, you will have a hard time for a while. Baihyung disappeared. Then there was a huge spark in the air and the intermediate Dakibi showed up in a formal suit. He looked around for a while, before speaking in a gruff voice. I'm sorry everyone. There was a bit of friction and the compensation was late. It is late but I will now reward you. 3,000 coins have been acquired for clearing the hidden scenario. You have earned 15,000 coins as compensation for killing the 5th grade fire dragon. You have obtained the protection symbol of the Immuntar for being the first to prevent a disaster. In the future, you will get the favor of the Immuntar people. Fortunately, the compensation was paid normally. In addition, the protection symbol of the Immuntar. Now that I got this, the upcoming 5th scenario wouldn't be so bad. It wasn't as much as what I got, but the faces of the other party members were hilarious once they received a clear reward. By the way, stingy bastards. I caught a disaster, and these were the only rewards? Then the intermediate Dakibi started talking. By the way, you worked so hard that there was a bit of a problem with the scenario. There was something sarcastic and ominous about his tone. As a result of discussions with the Bureau, it was reported that the average skill of the local incarnations doesn't match the difficulty of the scenario. Therefore, I have arbitrarily adjusted the difficulty level in my area using my own judgment. What? A random adjustment? The time limit of the 4th scenario has been significantly reduced. The mouth of the intermediate Dakibi curved up strangely as he looked at me. No, this bastard? There are 48 hours left until the end of the 4th scenario. All group representatives and members who haven't taken over the target within the next 48 hours will die. Yes, this was what he was planning? Young Minseob stared at me from where he was picking up the fallen items. Everyone had probably heard the message. Who is Chongsin Station now? T the Tyrant King. One of the 7 kings of Seoul, the Tyrant King. I said with a sigh, then let's return to Chunmuro. By the way, I didn't know if Yu Jonghyuk was doing well or not. Let's wrap up the 4th scenario. The distance from Enguk Station to Chunmuro was further than I thought. During the journey, we exchanged a few stories. Young Hee-won and Lee Hyun-sung walked ahead, while I walked in the rear with Lee Sung-kook and Young Min-seob. I couldn't take the entire body of the fire dragon, so I put half of it on the exchange. The other half was also placed on the exchange, but I deliberately put it at a ridiculously high price. It wasn't for sale, but a trick to use the exchange as a warehouse substitute. Bai Hyun grumbled, but I ignored it. Young Minseob opened his mouth. By the way, Representative Nim. It felt strange, because I really felt like a big company's president when I kept being called Representative Nim. Is your name Kim Dokja? Yes. Ah, it really is your name, is it unusual? Yes. Honestly, you are more like a prophet than we are. His voice was rather subdued. Sigh, if only I hadn't stopped reading. It was a belated regret. At this moment, I had a moment of doubt. There was something I wanted to ask, but I had forgotten. Young Minseob SSI, I want to ask you something. Yes. How did the prophets gather so quickly? This was a point that I always found strange. It hadn't been more than a month since the initial scenario started. However, these guys had already been working as a group. Furthermore, the apostles were even worse. Based on the first-person protagonist's point of view, they had a fairly high armed force that couldn't be obtained without occupying a large number of stations. It was a growth that couldn't be understood with my common sense. There was someone who called us together. Called you together? Yes. Soon after the first scenario ended, he came to the station where I was. Interesting. How was this possible? At that point, there would still be a barrier between stations. He introduced himself as an apostle and said that he had read the great book of Revelations. He recruited prophets to follow him. The odd thing was that it happened simultaneously in different stations. It is hard to believe it was done by one person. In any case, we gathered because of that apostle. He pulled us into the group. Yes, we call that apostle the first apostle. Is he the king of the prophets? The person who hates being called someone who got off. Ah, you already know. Yes. He likes to be called another name. Another name? He claims to be a true reader. What? There was a lot of talk about why he would call himself such a name. We couldn't come to a conclusion. He claimed to have read all of the Book of Revelations, but as the story continued, this person's identity became more and more doubtful. When I thought about the information he took advantage of, he didn't seem like a reader. I was busy thinking when Chungmuro approached. It hadn't been long since I left, but I felt like I had returned to my hometown as I took in the air of Chungmuro Station. I restrained my companions from entering the station. Wait a minute. Thinking about it, I was still naked. Why hadn't anyone said anything? I spoke to Lee Sungkook. Lee Sungkook SSI, please take off your pants. I took the lead to enter Chungmuro Station, while Lee Sungkook was forced to walk behind me in his underwear. I could see Yusenga welcoming me in the distance. I looked into her moist eyes, and could see how hard it had been. Something ran into me, and I saw Lee Gil-young attached to my right leg. Have you been well? The dusty Lee Gil-young nodded. Lee Jai-hai had a serious injury, and hadn't woken up yet. Gong Pilda scoffed and turned his head as soon as he saw me. The Constellation Defense Master reproaches you on your late return. It was a reaction I could understand since his incarnation nearly died. Yusenga SSI. Lee Hyunsung and Young Hee-won didn't know what happened in Chungmuro and ran towards the people with an aghast expression. People around the platform were bleeding. In fact, Yusenga had a cloth bound tightly to her shoulder. Some of the railroad tracks were covered with blood. They were traces of a fierce fight. Young Minseob stuttered, "To the apostles?" The heads of number 2, 3, 4, and 7 were lined up side by side on the railroad tracks. Their expressions seemed like they didn't realize their own death. I knew who was this skillful. I asked Lee Gil-young. Where is Yu Jong-hyuk? As I spoke, I felt an ominous presence from the Hohyang tunnel side. I knew, despite the distance. Our arrogant and dignified hero practiced the alone under heaven and earth scripture. Yu Jong-hyuk? He looked at me with no change in his expression. I thought he would say something about what happened in the theater dungeon, but what was this? The cut-off head of a person was still being held in his hands. Someone screamed while Yu Jong-hyuk threw the head this way. The head, rolling like a toy, was covered with a cloak with one on it. It was the first apostle. Yu Jong-hyuk was really great. He chased this guy to the end and killed him. I was half relieved and half anxious. I still had questions, but if the apostle died like this... At this moment, something ridiculous happened. It is you. You screwed up my plan. Right? The severed head suddenly started talking to me. Wakak. What? Young Minseob screamed and fell over. The eyes looked up at me while he smiled smugly. It was impossible. The skills that could be used even when the head was cut off was extremely rare even in ways of survival. It was possible if he used the skill Immortal Delay, but even with that skill, he couldn't stay in a state with his head cut off. Besides, there was no blood from the cut neck. Wait. Perhaps? The information that I received from Lee Sung-kook and Young Minseob started to run through my head. A man who revealed himself to all prophets and claimed to be a true reader. He appeared all over Seoul as soon as the scenario began and gathered people. In addition, it was possible to pass through the barriers. He didn't die when his head was cut and there was no blood. The avatar ability. I was certain. The guy in front of me was a fake. The severed head continued to speak. Wow, I am really impressed. Pretending to be Yu Jong-hyuk, beating the apostles and the dragon. What is your identity? I see. This guy didn't know my identity? What are you? As far as I knew, there were very few people who could use the avatar ability in ways of survival. The occupation that received such an attribute was normally fixed. They were occupations engaged in creative work and frequently experienced dissociative personality disorder due to excessive stress. I slowly looked him up and down before asking, are you perhaps a writer? Chapter 55. First-person protagonist's point of view. Part 5. Writer. It was one of the few occupations and ways of survival that could give the avatar ability. Some of his strange miracles would be explained if he was a writer. The lips of the first apostle subtly twisted. Writer, do you mean the creator of the Book of Revelations? You have found out. That's right, I wrote the Book of Revelations. I didn't mean this, but this bastard was suddenly talking nonsense. For me, it was a truth that wasn't possible. I looked towards Yu Jong-hyuk. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint has been activated. The character Yu Jong-hyuk is currently using lie detection LV6. I knew it. He was a meticulous jerk. I asked once again, you wrote the Book of Revelations? Yes. At the same time, I am also the sole owner of the Book of Revelations. A confident laugh emerged. Really? Let's challenge it once. The character Yu Jong-hyuk has used lie detection LV6. The character Yu Jong-hyuk has confirmed that the statement is true. What? This guy was telling the truth? I suddenly panicked and my circuits got tangled up. It wasn't possible, no matter how I thought about it. I hid my confusion and asked again, what exactly is the revelation you are talking about? Why are you asking when you already know? A great epic about the future. The character Yu Jong-hyuk has confirmed that the statement is true. Strange. There was some truth about it? Now it is your turn. How did you know about the plan of me and the apostles? Are you also an apostle? You wrote the Book of Revelations yourself? Then shouldn't you know? It is fun to be an omniscient creator. He giggled like a leisurely villain while I regained my composure. No matter how I looked, he wasn't the author of Ways of Survival. If he was really the writer of Ways of Survival, there was no way he wouldn't know that he gave me a text version. By the way, it is interesting. I thought the woman in See a Demon Prison would be the last apostle, but a man like you was hiding. See a demon prison? You don't know yet? Let's trade. Reveal your true identity. Then I will give you some information. Let's see? I don't think you have information that I want. I might have been overpowered, but this isn't my real body. You were a bit lucky. I know information about the future. I deliberately interrupted him. Now was the time to sprinkle a bit of spice for you, John Hyuk. In addition, I know much more than you. The character Yu Jong-hyuk has confirmed that your words are true. The expression of the first apostle stiffened. You're barking nonsense. I know more than you. At this moment, something flashed in his eyes. Wait a minute, perhaps? The moment he realized something, I also noticed something. This guy, was it him? Right now, there were 5 truths that I knew. 1. He had read Ways of Survival. 2. His occupation was a writer. 3. He wasn't the writer who wrote Ways of Survival. 4. He wrote a text that told the future. 5. His knowledge was only somewhat accurate. I read through 3,149 chapters of Ways of Survival. As far as I knew, Ways of Survival wasn't popular and there was no illegal text version. But if he was the guy that I thought, it would be understandable if this guy had a text version and knew a lot about Ways of Survival. I opened my mouth. Do you like to live while copying others? What? His eyes were shaken. There was no doubt. The first apostle was him. I didn't think you would live like this. The revelation. Do you want to live like this? My teeth starts grinding together when I think about your claims of being the creator of the Book of Revelations. What? It is somewhat strange. The information that you have used is meager. The guy paled. Isn't it time to stop acting like this? Are you still doing it despite the world becoming like this? Yu Jong-hyuk. The guy hurriedly looked at Yu Jong-hyuk. Yu Jong-hyuk. Work with me. He was silly. As I said before, I know all of the revelations. Only I can take you to the end of this road in this world. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint Stage 2 has been activated. Due to high fatigue, you are unable to activate Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint Stage 2. Damn, right now? Think carefully. You can't break through the 46th scenario alone. You have to hold hands with me to defeat Anna Croft and the Calatestra. This jerk was speaking the same words I did. Yu Jong-hyuk shook his head. I have never heard of the revelations. It is like a prophecy. Can't you see my attribute? It even says that I am the last. The character Yu Jong-hyuk has used Sage's Eyes LV8. I also activated the skill. The information of this person can't be read in character list. This person isn't registered in character list. Damn, I couldn't see it. Yu Jong-hyuk verified something with Sage's eyes and looked at me. The severed head continued to speak. Kill him. You should know that he is dangerous. He pretended to be you and will seriously damage you in the future. If you leave him alone, he will cause a serious butterfly effect and ruin all your plans. I was outraged. Did this jerk want to die together with me? Isn't it the same for you? I am different. Yu Jong-hyuk, hold hands with me. I will give you a vow or whatever you want. I will never betray you. He came out strongly. Yu Jong-hyuk watched the situation and opened his mouth. I see. Joining hands. Life started to creep into Yu Jong-hyuk's eyes as he looked at me. I couldn't incite his mind, so I was going crazy. Yu Jongyuk slowly moved his sword towards me. The first apostle's momentum rose as he shouted. Go ahead and kill him. Kill him. One is a prophet and one is a revelator. Kill him. Peek. Yu Jongyuk trampled on the head of the first apostle. Kook, what? If you really know the future, then let me ask you one thing. What? The blade moved to my neck. The one sword that I experienced through Yu Jongyuk was now heading towards me. I felt a sting and something warm flowed down my neck. Hey! What are you doing? The surprised Jim Hee-won ran towards this side. I raised my hand and restrained the party. I was nervous, but it wasn't good to stimulate Yu Jongyuk here. Yu Jongyuk asked the first apostle. I will ask you. Will I kill this guy now or not? What? If you have really received a revelation of the future, you will know my choice. This bastard had a bad habit. He was doing this again? The face of the first apostle looked agonized. Maybe I was the same on the even bridge. Surprisingly, the answer came quickly. Of course you will kill him. You must do it. It was a face full of strong convictions. His face was arrogantly assured that Yu Jongyuk would act like this. Come on, kill him. And the sword moved. But what followed wasn't the sound of flesh being cut. Kwajik. The head of the first apostle burst as it was stepped on. The person wouldn't die because it was an avatar, but he would suffer considerable psychological damage. Yu Jongyuk's sword was soon removed. He was a mouthy bastard. I was a bit stunned. Yu Jongyuk chose to spare me? I felt a bit shaken. I wasn't sure. Yu Jongyuk stared at me for a moment before walking away. Hey! Where are you going? This jerk, he must think he was so cool. Honestly, he was a bit cool. Just wait. Are you going to leave with Li Jihai? Since the future has changed, the plan has also changed. Why don't you act together with me? I can help you. Yu Jongyuk turned towards me. I reflexively shrank back at his eyes. The debt is paid off. My last favor is not taking away your flag. This bastard? But I couldn't retreat like this. In any case, you can't leave the station unless I remove you from the group. Do you want to receive the punishment? Yu Jongyuk slowly moved his hand towards the hilt of his sword. I quickly added. I know what your plan is. Aren't you going towards Yonggu? It is your goal to complete the black flag by walking the King's Road. I will help you. I would rather take your flag right now. Then try it. Is your sword faster or my tongue faster? It was a gamble. Yu Jongyuk could stab my neck before the effect of the punishment appeared. You don't need to go towards Yonggu. Go to the north. The territory of the tyrant king will be yours, and it will help you make your grand flag. Getting a flag and removing the enemy, isn't it killing two birds with one stone? I can do it myself. There are 48 hours left until the end of the fourth scenario. Can you occupy 20 stations and complete the black flag in that time? Yu Jongyuk's hands hesitated. He was caught. Besides, don't you have a reason for going north? Surely you aren't going to throw away your family member at this time. You. Remain calm. I am speaking in good faith. I really will help. Yu Jongyuk's angry eyes stared at me for a moment. The atmosphere was strained. The killing intent soon disappeared. There is no such thing as anything free in the world. What are your conditions? As expected, the regressor was quick to notice. I said with a smile, it is simple. Let me know just one thing. My condition is that simple. What is it? That guy you just stepped on, what is his attribute? One would be the last to get off. What is the other one? After a while, Yu Jonghyuk opened his mouth. 10 minutes afterwards, I called Young Minseob and Lee Sungkook. It was a separate matter for the two of them. Before I could open my mouth, Young Minseob asked me first. In the end, what was that guy? I hesitated for a moment before asking. Do you know the novel SSSSS Great Infinite Regressor? Ah, I read it. Lee Sungkook raised his hand. Wasn't it the #1 platinum novel on Textpia? It was really fun. Ah, that's right. I had forgotten, but now it rings a bell. How did it finish? The two of them started speaking loudly as memories popped up. As expected, these guys must be interested in web novels if they read Ways of Survival. There were all types of elements, but it was still fun. In fact, I read that novel. I was reading Ways of Survival and accidentally clicked on it since it was on the Today's Best list. Then I was surprised to see the development and setting of the novel. An infinite regressor psychopath. Sponsorship from Transcendent Beings. Streaming system. A survival game with absurd missions. In fact, these were common settings. The problem was the details of the common settings and the way they were combined. I had left a comment as soon as I read it. Isn't this plagiarizing Ways of Survival? I remembered. Rather than a plagiarism controversy, I was criticized for comparing it to a bad novel. I received terrible messages from the readers of SSSSS Great Infinite Regressor. Isn't your business over there? Stop causing inconveniences. I was furious and even sent a note to the writer of Ways of Survival. Then the author said something. He was in a better mood because the number of views had increased. I teared up because I thought the author was pitiful. Lee Sungkook asked, but why are you talking about this novel? The First Apostle is the author of SSSSS Great Infinite Regressor. Huh? It can't be. That author would know Ways of Survival. Now that the world had turned into the novel, a writer who plagiarized the novel could claim copyrights on this world. In addition, he added the absurd setting of the revelation. After some explanations, Young Minseob understood and made an absurd expression. It was a plagiarized novel? Yes. Come to think of it, the novel was similar. I can't remember well, because it is old. Why didn't that novel pop up first in my mind? I was much more famous. Is it due to the attribute? Only the portion we read popped up. The SS part is also confusing because there are too many novels with them. Is that so? In any case, the First Apostle is a plagiarist? Then he will have a text version. I nodded and said. Maybe he has a copy of his own plagiarized work. He copied the plot of the original so he can see the future of this world to a certain extent. It was painful when thinking that a plagiarist was successful even in this changed world. It was time to implement justice. Then isn't it impossible to win against him? If he copied the original to the end. It isn't to the end. He only copied the early parts. He would stop early to prevent a plagiarism controversy later on. After a bit more time, the information he knows will decrease. How do you know this? I just know. It was natural. In the chapters in the 100s, I was the only reader of Ways of Survival. Excuse me, how far did Representative Nim read in the original work? Before that, there is something you have to do. To be exact, it is something we have to do together. Their shoulders stiffened. Didn't you tell me before? The prophets were hit by the tyrant king. Maybe there are still a few people being used by him. Really? Then it is better. Yes? The time remaining until the scenario ended was 48 hours. It was hard to do it alone if I wanted to hunt the tyrant king. I will disturb the information of these guys. If the tyrant king was using the prophets, I could take advantage of it. Reveal part of the revelations. Huh? How? They still didn't understand what I was talking about, so I kindly explained. From now on, we will make a text of SSSSS, Great Infinite Regressor, and spread it. If there were several enemies, the answer was to make them fight against each other.